Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 72 of IGEL Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. Today is January 24th, 2023. You've probably heard me say this before, but I'll say it again. We do so much content at XenTegra. I have to start putting the date in there because I forget what days we did what, which is an awesome problem to have, but still a problem to have. Therefore, you should hear me adding the date quite often. All right, well, I got my panel with me today. Super excited, as always. We decided this is going to be a corporate edition podcast because, basically Seb couldn't make it. Plus, he and I just did one I posted today. So it's time for a corporate one. And Chris Feeney's been hiding since mid-December, and now he's back in.
Polar bear hibernation is what it was. Back at it.
So let's see. This is going to be interesting. I almost screwed this up. So on the XenTegra side, I have Barry Browne, who's brand new to us, part of the IGEL community, part of the EUC community on the Citrix side, the VMware side, the IGEL side, and probably more places. And I'll ask him to tell us in a minute. But Barry's one of our solutions architects at XenTegra now, based in the Montreal area, I believe. But Barry, welcome to the podcast, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. As you mentioned, I'm Barry Browne, but not in Montreal. Don't speak French. I'm in Halifax, which is about as far east as you can go in Canada. Next stop after my place is Europe. So I actually have my own little time zone here. I'm in Atlanta time. So for me, recording time is 10:40 a.m. And I think most of you guys are in Eastern, so it's 9:40 for you guys. So there's a little bit of knowledge I'm going to impart right off the bat is that there's an Atlantic time zone that I bet a lot of you guys didn't know.
So are you guys close to where the Titanic ended up?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. About 5 kilometers from here, there's a Titanic graveyard just down the road, right on the waterfront where I live, and it's a pretty somber place. And even in downtown Halifax, there's another Titanic graveyard. It's kind of strange. It's surrounded by big high-rise buildings and just a 25 by 25 meter area grass that's perfectly maintained, a single headstone. So it's quite surreal to drive by it in the middle of a bustling city.
I listen to podcasts when I can't sleep. And last night, one of the podcasts that started to play, and then I fell asleep, was talking. It was going to compare the movie Titanic to the actual Titanic historical event. And I was so excited to listen to it. And then I fell asleep. I got to go back and find that one and listen to it.
Well, it's funny, completely off topic. I'll send you guys a picture. I'll put it in the chat notes also. There was a picture of downtown Halifax on the waterfront of them, all the undertakers waiting for the bodies with their, horse and carts, ready for the poor souls who perished. But it's a really disturbing picture, but it's so fantastic at the same time. So I'll share that when we're finished here. But in terms of my professional life, I'm an IGEL guy, Citrix guy, VMware guy, as Andy mentioned. I dabble in a lot of technologies, and I'm actually proud to say that the organization I worked for before XenTegra was the very first IGEL customer in Canada. So most of you guys know Ken Shipman. So he cold called me one day. He happened to catch me at the right time where we were looking for, a thin client model as we went to, go down the path of, testing the whole work from home model. And again, this is pre-COVID. So we started with a tiny, 10, 15 cent seat purchase. And then the wheels fell off and we grew. And our IGEL footprint, from my old organization, our IGEL footprint is one of the bigger ones in Canada today. Yeah. So with that being said, I'm happy to be on the podcast.
So Barry,
looking forward to many more.
On that, tell us, what was the key differentiator that moved? Did you have thin clients before IGEL, or was it all new? All thin client, all new?
No, it was 100% fat clients, Windows boxes on desks, and we wanted to send people home. And so we did look at some of the big boys. We looked at, the Dells and the HPs of the world. But the one piece that kept failing them was the management. So for me, the management piece is the golden ticket for IGEL. It's great to have, IGEL operating system on an endpoint, but without a way to manage that, you're in trouble.
Well, here's how I say it. So the big boys, which are really just the hardware big boys, they're not big boys.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The thin client space, their operating system is small boys, not big boys, but big boy in the space in terms of hardware. But to me, all these years, and it frustrated the heck out of me, all of those guys, all they wanted to put out was a minimal viable product until IGEL showed up. And now they're having to step up their game.
Oh, I agree with that 100%. We got them some demo units in and we contacted support and says, yeah, we don't really know much about that. We're Dell. We deal with shipping boxes, not managing endpoints.
Yeah, for sure. Well, welcome to the podcast. We'll talk more. We'll learn more about you along the way. As just happened with the Titanic thing and me being the host, there's no telling what might come up. So just be
Thank you.
All right. So now I'm going to introduce this guy named Patrick Toner, who's been with us for a year plus now on the podcast. Well, Patrick has a new role over at LG Electronics. Patrick, welcome back to the podcast in your new role. Tell us what you're up to.
Well, thank you. I think in the spirit of Titanic, you said you'd never let me go, and here I am. I'm here on the podcast, so glad to be here. And yeah, so as Andy mentioned, and to anyone listening, so I switched roles. So went from being a solutions architect at XenTegra to taking on a role at LG. And in a lot of ways, what I find out, I try to tell my wife, like, I used to work at IGEL, and I still work with everybody there, sort of. I mean, we're kind of always talking, so we're always working together. Such a small community here. We all work together. It's pretty cool. But yeah, it's kind of nice. One of the things that was appealing to me about this role is, back when I joined IGEL back in 2018, Chris and I, as we mentioned, joined the same day. We were kind of in not a very large company in the United States. It was a smaller company. But at the time, IGEL was really disrupting the whole space. There was just, people didn't really know who IGEL was, right? They were using Dell, they were using HP. They were using the small boy type technology you're talking about there, Andy. In a lot of ways, we disrupted the market. It was really cool to be a part of that. And now IGEL's almost a household name in our space. LG is kind of going through a similar thing, right? We all know LG is a brand name. I have an LG TV in my living room. We have appliances, but the LG Compute lineup it started as a thin client technology. We're expanding that out into other things, including a laptop line for Windows users. But we're really expanding our thin client collection as well to work with IGEL. So we're a big IGEL Ready partner. So I'm really excited. I think, we a lot of people don't think of LG in that space. Once they see the technology, myself included, back when I was kind of a partner of theirs, they become believers. So definitely excited to be here, still be on the podcast, and talk to you guys on a regular basis here.
I think it's interesting. Right? You got LG who understands where their swim lane is, which is producing cost-effective, high-end, high-performance hardware, taking advantage of a new world of operating system, whether it's IGEL or Windows or Google, IGEL, Microsoft, Google. It's operating system as a service that goes on your choice of hardware, and LG is bringing hardware to the market that fits that space really well as a high-end Windows endpoint, or as a middle of the road to low end, thin client, cost-effective solution just for end user compute.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I think about this. IGEL's really shifted their, and Chris, maybe you could speak to this a little bit, but shifted who their competitors are in a lot of ways, right? Really, IGEL's biggest competitor is, Microsoft on the endpoint, or Google on the endpoint, or maybe a smaller company like a Stratadesk on the endpoint. Where back in the day, it seemed we were a little bit more at odds with Dell. A little odds at HP, even though we would still we're kind of frenemies, right? Would use their hardware, but it's funny how that shifted over the years. Now it's IGEL really trying to fully take that market share, versus the other guys there.
Yeah, my comment there often comes up. I think our biggest competitor is the status quo. I've always done it this way. Why would I change? And yeah, we have actual competitors in terms of other vendors out there, but really it's your on the disrupt theme, which is still our theme. We'll have a disrupt conferences in person here coming up again. It really is about changing the hearts and minds of those who, are trying, moving things to the cloud, which we'll talk about here, that digital workspace, but not necessarily having the same OS on that endpoint to get them there. I think this is a good transition now, Andy.
It's a super transition, and I'm gonna sneeze. Holy cow! So it's a super good transition. I was thinking about this yesterday, talking to some Citrix folks, and I talked to VMware folks, and I talked to Microsoft folks, and IGEL, all in the same day. And I'm thinking about, okay, if I'm new to this space and I don't have the legacy and the lineage of where all this stuff comes from, how do I even begin to explain to someone what it is we're doing? And it led me to this. And then this is the blog you brought up today. And this is what the Digital Workspace Ecosystem Alliance is trying to do. They're trying to kind of get it out there where you can lay out what the space looks like, right? It's not Citrix and RDS/terminal services anymore. Those were your only two options, that and what Quest back in the day. Now it's, 15 to 20 different capable players, and some of them can do SaaS, and some of them can do published apps, and some of them can do published desktops from a multi-user server OS, and some can do persistent VDI desktops, and some of them can do all of them. Some of them do it from this cloud or that cloud or all the clouds plus your data center plus some partner data center. It is a very complex space these days. And if you're interested in learning about the space, the guys that are doing the most, and it's not perfect, but the guys doing the most are these Digital Workspace Ecosystem Alliance, also known as DWEA. It's a nonprofit consortium of companies that are coming together to try to help clear the cloudiness of the digital workspace space for all of us. And I think what we're going to talk about here is Chris brought the blog. Let me read it to you. The blog is from November of 2022. Divya Sagar, she's the one that wrote it, and the title of it is the future of work requires solid digital workspace strategies, and I'll throw the word understanding on it, because you can go a bunch of different directions and get it right. You can also go a bunch of different directions and get it wrong. So it's important that organizations like this, which IGEL is part of, tries to help educate us into the best decisions along the way as we can, knowing that we still might get it wrong, but there's plenty of options out there to get it right. What I can tell you in most cases is wrong is giving somebody a Windows laptop with a VPN on it. That's the only thing I'll tell you is wrong. Everything else has lots of iterations on what might work. So Chris, I probably did a lot of it, but maybe I didn't. Why did you want to talk about this blog specifically?
Well, a few things. It's the beginning of the year. We're kind of, as you have probably seen, sometime last year, things began to ramp up in terms of breaking free from the 2-year fog of not being able to do much of anything. Everything was remote, virtual, that type of thing, but things are beginning to pick up where, hybrid work, all these things kind of, the massive adoption of these enabling technologies like cloud, and so here we are, right on the cusp of this. And obviously the uptick, the changes in the industry, think about the big players out there, all the changes that have occurred just in the last year plus with Citrix and VMware and certainly with Microsoft. And from an IGEL perspective, we have entered 2023 with zero focus on IGEL hardware. It's all about the operating system and partnering with our vendors that really focus on having great hardware. And so I think it's a good topic. Selfishly, I also think about it from the title, the future of work, right? My son is about to enter the working world, just graduated college, and he's going to work for a job with the federal government, Department of State more specifically. But I was reading an article this weekend. The mayor of DC is really upset that the federal government is still allowing so many employees that are not coming into downtown because they're still able to work remotely. And that is a sea change. I covered federal when I first got here, and I was in DC. I was, and it was packed downtown. Busy as all get out. And now it's like, deserted in some cases. And so think about, taking a large organization like the federal government, disrupting how they used to do things. And now you're at a place where do they bring people back into the office, or are they massively adopting a digital workspace strategy, as we probably know they are? So I think it's a good topic to start the year off with.
And Chris, just to follow up on that, I'm looking at this article here, the bullet point number 1, the hybrid remote work, where 33.9% of respondents confirmed the option of hybrid work will be permanent, and 24.5% the option work remotely will be permanent. To me, that's extremely low. So I'd love to get, the panel's thoughts on what you guys thought that number would be. I thought it would be in the 60, 70%, as, COVID's in our rearview mirror now. And, or perhaps this is, furthers this conversation where there's not a strategic plan for digital transformation.
So Barry, I have to assume, well, 34% is actually a really big number. I think if you're considering people that just can't work remote, right? People that have to be in an office because they have no other choice, or it just creates so much complexity for them not to be in the office, or companies that are conservative and old school, maybe they have real estate they want people to take advantage of. Or this happened to me yesterday in my leadership meeting. We were all kind of joking, sitting around, having a good time while we were in a leadership meeting. And when you do that online, you just don't have that luxury of that human interaction, and it's super valuable. I think 34% is a good number when you factor all that. Patrick, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you think about a third, kind of to your point, Andy. I'm just thinking people I know. I have 3 sisters who are nurses, right? Obviously, they couldn't be remote. There's a lot of roles out there that couldn't. The fact that a third of the workforce, if again, it's a poll, if it absolutely aligns to reality, to me, that's a pretty high number. Of a third of the people being at least hybrid.
Patrick, that's hybrid. That's 34% hybrid. It's the 25% we're going to talk about in a second. That's full-time remote. That one I find really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. When I used to work in healthcare, we had a CIO who she was very opposed to working from home, and somehow our bosses were able to get 1 day a week, and that was, for the time, that was like a big deal. Like I could work from home from 1 day. I mean, now a lot of the customers I talk to, I'm sure you guys have the same conversations. They kind of have a little bit more ability to work from home most of the week. Maybe they go in periodically for a day here or there for meetings, which I think is a good balance. So
let me add this to it, right? So Barry Browne is new to us, but I got a good sense that he, like many other people at XenTegra, if I could get him in an office and surround him with people that could absorb some of his energy and passion for what we're doing, that's something I can't get if we never go to an office.
Yeah.
Like I see so many people that just kind of fizzle, or, and I had this, my second job where I didn't go in an office. First job, I didn't go in an office. Second job, period. I found myself at the mall walking around some days. I'm like, I got to find a way to get engaged and excited about what I'm doing. And I changed jobs and careers. I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. I think when you spend too much time in your home office, it's like just going outside. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a world out here, but that human interaction piece is just crucial.
So let me do this. Let's take a quick poll here. I think Chris Feeney's probably worked remote for a very long time. Patrick, I think you've worked remote for a while. Barry, you just came from the corporate world. How much were you working hybrid or remote from your job?
I was 100% in office until March 2020. And then it was 100% remote. And, to what your point of everybody going and walk in the mall, walk around the block, I was going into the office 1 day a week just to get out of the house.
Yeah.
I had that option. My office was only 20 kilometers away, so it wasn't, and there's no traffic here. So I didn't mind that at all. But it was to keep my sanity more than anything. I was going into the office. And
sometimes that's on you, the employee. I talked to an employee at XenTegra last week, and they wanted to change jobs. And when it really got down to it, they just wanted out of their house. I'm like, well, you can fix that lots of ways. It doesn't, you don't have to get a different job to change that.
100%. Yep.
And Barry, the leadership where you just came from, and we don't have to name names, but where you just came from, how were they feeling about what happened in March of 2020?
Well, like I mentioned at the top of the call, we were starting to go down the work at home model just because we're so Eastern in Canada. The labor pool we were looking into was pretty limited. So we didn't have a choice. We had to look outside of our local geography. So they were certainly open to working from home, not at 98% or whatever we ended up at, maybe 15, 20% as a proof of concept. But then COVID came along and everything changed where we had to do it in 48 hours instead of 3 years.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah. So, hats off to, our ability to implement IGEL very, very quickly, as opposed to, your traditional give everybody a laptop, give them VPN, because that would have been an absolute nightmare.
Or worse yet, give them their company PC and tell them take it home with them. That happened a lot.
Around here, it happened a whole lot. Talking to some of my colleagues in, in other companies, that was the way they operated. Take your PC off your desk, go home, see it in, we joke about it now, see you in 2 weeks when COVID's over. But
So Chris Feeney, tipping point number 2, walk us through what the graph is showing us there.
I had to zoom in on it, but let's, so this is basically our companies, have they been working on a digital workspace strategy? And so the survey came in. This is about, again, 2,500 organizations participated in this. Close to 50%, well, just 44.7 are currently in the process of developing that strategy, which is, I think that's fairly good. It's in some cases, as Barry was talking earlier, a lot of companies just didn't have that in mind. And then, of course, the wrecking ball of COVID came and sort of had to disrupt that. Just below that, 37% have already developed that strategy. I know, Andy, you and I talk a lot. When you go into organizations, you bring up what is that endpoint strategy or digital workspace strategy, and oftentimes I know you're very surprised by some of the answers you get, including 12% have not even developed a long-term strategy yet. They're still probably in the I'm just trying to survive mode. Around 11% are currently evaluating solutions, beginning to deploy. That's always usually where IGEL fits in with some of these technologies. Maybe that's a POC of IGEL often, or even a combined solution, maybe a combo of Azure, Citrix, VMware, whatever it might be. And then there's the last pit, 6% survey that have actually, they have already fully executed their strategy. So very much on the low end, but they're already up and running. So that's a nutshell to crack. Go ahead.
Couple comments on that. All of these are some form of right and some form of wrong. The one that to me is wrong at this point, it's 2023. If you tell me you give people a Windows something laptop, probably with a VPN on it, that's the only wrong answer. And then what I would point out about the 6.2 that have fully done it, there's no such thing as fully or final. Hopefully they put something in place that will evolve as the digital transformation that you're providing access to evolves.
Yeah. We're at a place now where I think a lot of the conversations I've been noticing lately are they have started to shift things, and they're in a sort of a hybrid on-prem cloud scenario in terms of where they're accessing the workspace from, but they are heavily considering complete cloud, meaning Azure most likely in a lot of cases, and getting out of the data center business, or relying on partners. Maybe it's a vendor partner to provide hosting of an application, whatever, and then everything else is consumed, maybe a sort of that hybrid cloud, right? Cloud over here, cloud over there, but it's all cloud essentially.
So Barry, which of these stages should someone be considering a Linux non-Windows endpoint, specifically IGEL?
It's all
of them, right?
Yeah, 100%. Why would you give Windows on the endpoint if you're connecting to a digital workspace? To me, coming from corporate IT, it makes zero sense. Zero sense.
Yeah. You don't use, you use the smartness of a smart TV these days. You don't get I put in 3 TVs this weekend. I didn't wire cable to any of them. I don't do it the old way anymore. It just makes no sense. Give me a power outlet anywhere in my house and I can have TV.
What I'd be interested about this report is going back, if it's assuming it's created annually, going back 2 or 3 years and see what these numbers were. I bet you it looked very, very different.
I think the ecosystem just came up about a year ago. Maybe this is the second one they've done.
Okay.
But I bet there's some data out there for this. All right. I love this. We'll never get done, but let's keep going. Patrick, complexity and concerns around complexity. Help us understand what we're learning here.
Well, if I understand what they're getting at here, like any type of environment, you want to basically keep things as simple, as streamlined, as standardized as possible, right? So I'm trying to put myself in the mindset of an organization like Barry was describing, 2020, right? March 2020. Hey, I have to figure out what to do here. I had a lot of conversations back then with different customers that maybe didn't have this type of strategy. Some of them said, you know what, let's just go with the status quo. That's what we know. I don't want to inject any more complexity into the environment, anything different. I think we're kind of past that now. Now people have had time to think and everything about it. So to me, I think that's a big concern. And I think that's where IGEL really still is a great solution, because you really by moving from a Windows endpoint to an IGEL endpoint, you're removing complexity. You're removing a lot of that out of the equation. And I think that's what a lot of customers find once they make that transition. I'm sure, Barry, you can speak to that yourself as a former customer. And And, and then I go a step further. You don't want to, like some customers say, hey, let's do BYOD. That was a big thing before digital workspace, right? That was the biggest buzzword in the industry was BYOD. And what a lot of people found with true BYOD, yeah, you can do it, but that adds more complexity. You want to standardize maybe, what you're sending out to your users, maybe something like an LG laptop, right? Standardize your hardware, standardize your solution, and just standardize what the users are able to do at the endpoint. You can remove a lot of the complexity and actually come away with less management on the back end, which a lot of our customers find day in, day out.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. You talk to some CTOs, CIOs, system administrators, they know Windows, they're comfortable with Windows, so they buy Windows. But it's not until they actually experience, the ease of management with a light operating system on the endpoint that's easily managed. Do you have that, light bulb moment where, we don't necessarily need Windows on the desktop going forward?
Yeah.
Hey, you know who else is comfortable with Windows? The bad guys.
Oh yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's where they learn. And that's not Microsoft. I mean, Microsoft's awesome. Operating system enables a heck of a lot of capabilities, but some of those things that it does to enable also can be used against you.
Yeah, there's a story about I don't know if you guys were aware of a hospital in Canada called Sick Kids Hospital. It's a major hospital in the Toronto area, and it just recently got hit by ransomware, the Lockbit ransomware strain, I guess it was. And so they were down for week 10 days where they couldn't perform critical surgeries on children. And you don't put the blame on Microsoft, you don't put the blame on the system administrators, but Windows on the endpoint, never a great idea, from my opinion.
Yeah. Hey guys, we've talked a lot about, I'm going to handle the next one, number 4, and that's because I'm passionate about this topic. And this topic is around virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, or virtual app delivery, which I'm fine with. Somewhere in that mix is also SaaS-based app delivery to a browser, which is, where the world is going. Of course, I've heard that for 30 years now, probably 30 years. But my point is, a lot of people are looking for solutions. Some are in the VDI world, some are in the virtual app and desktop world. Everybody's going to be doing SaaS at some point, even companies that don't believe in the cloud. They're going to do SaaS because what they need, that's going to be the only way to buy it. Certainly some element of search going on for the right solution for you. And my answer to everybody who listens to this, it's not VDI, it's not virtual app, it's not SaaS, it's a digital workspace that brings it all together to help you access your digital transformation stage that you're currently in. And the reason why I say it so bullishly is because I don't see another option, and digital transformation is going to happen from now until I'm long gone. And you need to put something in place that's very viable to whatever the future, the current and the future is. If you ask me, what do XenTegra employees use most of the time? It's a VDI. And my answer to you is, you ask me why, I say that's because we're dumb. And what I mean by that is because we don't realize the digital workspace and the apps, SaaS and legacy apps could just be used. I give a user a desktop, which is just another digital workspace, and they go from digital workspace to digital workspace. But when they land on that digital workspace, aka the desktop, Windows desktop, they feel comfortable. And I'm not going to argue with them. If that's what they need to get their job done, then that's what they use to get their job done.
Hey Andy, I got a question for you on this. I'd be curious your thoughts. When they say virtual app delivery, are we, do you think they're defining this specifically as, or not even what how do you define it? Is it, when you think of that, do you think of it in the context just of something like a virtual app delivery in the context of something like a Zen app? Or are we also talking about things like Cameo, right? A technology that takes a Windows app, turns it into an HTML5 application, SaaS applications. Are we talking about virtual app delivery in that context too, when you think of digital workspaces?
So let me answer this in my Andy way. Barry's never heard me ask this before. Okay, Barry, what's the most widely used Microsoft application on the planet?
Windows.
Have you heard me say this before?
No.
Okay, well, you're the first person to ever get it right. So there you go.
Yay, me.
Windows, like people say, IE and Edge and Outlook or whatever, and those are all great answers. But Windows is just an app that gives you a UI to get you to all the other things that you're trying to get to. And I know this because the first time I ever saw a guy do it, he basically just published explore.exe with a switch, and boom, Windows came up. It's like, oh, it's just Windows. So I say that, Patrick, because to me, there's this pie chart here. It's got VDI and VAD, and it could have SAS. To me, it's all the same thing. We're talking about a workload that's running virtually somewhere else, delivered over a virtual protocol. It's all the same thing. It's just what meets your needs. In our case, XenTegra, what meets our needs is what our people feel comfortable with, AKA VDI more often than not. And that's just not a battle I'm willing to fight internally right now.
Got it. Yeah. And I come from that question from the standpoint of, I wonder which way it's going to start to head in the future here with, so many applications have gone to a SaaS model, and you look at a technology like an IGEL, right? Is there a day coming when the user doesn't even need the VDI session into Windows? They can just hit a browser and get to everything they need, and something like an Okta or whatever can be that broker to say, hey, you have access to this, you don't have access to that. I don't know.
It's who's framing the conversation. If XenTegra's framing it, we got options. If IGEL's framing it, you got options. If Apple's framing it with iOS, they just want you to do apps. If Google's framing it, they want you to do apps. Now, at the same time, Google realizes they've got to have relationships with VMware and Citrix and Cameo so that they have that desktop story covered, that x86 app covered, because it's going to be a massive part of enterprise IT for a very, very long time. All right, Chris Feeney, back to you. The focus of customer experience. That's a good one to ask the IGEL guy.
Yeah, this is a great one because I think it somewhat transitions from the one above it, right? I mean, VDI, it's been around for a while, the legacy on-prem kind of thing, and the shift to the cloud, if you're going to consume Windows from that location, it really does now come to, okay, a familiar workspace delivered now from a place that I am technically not managing, I'm renting. It will come down to, is the user experience going to be excellent, or is it going to be a pain in terms of lots of help desk calls, frustrated people, whatever? Ultimately, if somebody's, not able to do their work, they'll go find somewhere else to work where they can. And so what we've seen in this shift is this focus. And while this certainly talks about sort of that customer experience, sort of giving up sort of that balance between security and convenience, I like to think about it that way, right? There's, if I let them bring their own device, there's heavy security concerns about that if I'm not managing that endpoint. If it's just a browser isolation, all this other stuff, I'm not an expert in that particular area, but obviously a browser is a great attack vector, and also just generally speaking. So the IGEL's focus is obviously with a common OS, easier to manage. You can control that user experience, and now if we focus on a platform like the LG Gram, for example, now you have a great user form factor, a laptop accessing and also be able to offload things like video and audio so that it feels like it's installed locally, that Windows desktop, for example. And, for me, I could be consuming that desktop halfway around the world, right? And, is there latency, that type of thing? And so these are all things kind of leaning up to that. And focusing on that. And so I just been focusing heavily on obviously making sure our OS can provide that in conjunction with all the vendor partners in the ecosystem.
Yeah. And guys, I travel a ton, and the only time, like I literally use my virtual desktop. You can see my screen right now. It's one of them's in my tray right now. I use a virtual desktop a lot throughout the day. When I'm on a good network, a decent network, I barely even realize I'm in a virtual desktop. I start lots of Teams and Zoom meetings without even realizing I'm in a virtual desktop. And then I have to decide either I'm going to stay or get out of it. But when I travel, those, when I'm on a subway, a train, an airplane, or I'm out near where Barry lives, that's kind of a joke, but I assume there are challenges sometimes if you live in a place with not a huge population. When I'm at my own personal condo that I have here, I have challenges. I have low bandwidth scenarios, but the customer experience is really good. But if I compare it to being like on a store and forward type of app, like an Outlook, and using a VPN, I don't notice. And so we do have the benefit of network connectivity is so much better than it used to be, but it's not perfect everywhere. Barry, did you run into challenges that with your users?
Well, yeah. So my old background was a contact centers, and we were running our telephony platform within a Citrix environment, for example. And there was a lot of challenges, as you hire folks who get geographically further away from your PBX. So, we have folks connecting to Citrix, who are in India but connecting to the PBX settings in Halifax, and you can't really defeat the laws of physics there. Geography is geography, so there's always going to be that latency that you're going to have to deal with. But with a combination of the IGEL and some of the optimizations we can do with the workspace client, we were generally able to overcome the vast majority of our network issues, with the exception of a couple of folks who went to Australia and didn't tell us. That's just too far.
Wow. Sorry, because I don't know. I click it. I got to figure out which app is going crazy on me. All right, Patrick Toner, your new role is as a business development guy, right?
Yeah.
All right, you get number 6. Cost justify this thing.
Yeah, that's a good one right there when you get to cost. Obviously, so if we're looking at our whole solution here with digital workspace, everything we're talking about, a lot of times the conversation with customers is IGEL has the best ROI specifically. If you're moving from the status quo to a true digital workspace environment, on the endpoint discussion, IGEL's got its best ROI when it's going to repurpose what you have, which of course is that's always going to be just one of the things that's just such a great appealing thing about IGEL. And where I would come in now as LG is, hey, maybe some organizations say, look, we just want it to look good. I just had a conversation with a guy like that a few weeks ago. We have these old devices. Let's get these things out of here. Let's get a nice all-in-one device, curved screen, really, really cool looking device. That matters to some organizations. And other organizations say, look, we have to make sure that we have that, that the numbers that make sense up front. But then, as we talked about before, complexity and standardization, as my devices that I've converted to IGEL start to fail, right? Because motherboards will die, and if they have spinning disk hard drives, they're going to crash. There's all different things. Screens start to go. Let's get a plan together to, as we refresh our hardware, let's standardize on something that we know is absolutely certainly going to work with IGEL. It's already certified with IGEL, something like LG hardware. We have obviously our thin clients. We have our laptop form factors. We have our all-in-one form factors. All those things are certified by IGEL. Let's get a plan together, and let's start to use that as our hardware refresh budget. So, I think so. Overall, there's more pieces to that that you could probably speak to a little better, Andy. The things on the back end, the things like Citrix, the things like whatever they're using to deliver their applications.
Yep.
They're not there today. There's obviously an investment there, but overall, at the endpoint side, it's an incredible cost savings a lot of times when you talk about converting and then standardizing down the road.
So let me Andy-fy this thing real quick. Barry, you just came from corporate world, right? So let's role play for just a second. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming somewhere along the way you told someone VDI, end user compute, some of this stuff could be expensive or is expensive. Did that conversation ever come up?
100%. Yeah, and I even said, to the CFO, it's going to be more expensive.
Well, and that may be true, but let me ask you this question. Before you tell me it's too expensive, tell me how much your total cost of ownership is today.
For the IGEL fleet?
No. If you had PCs today, Windows PCs, how much does it cost to buy it, deploy it, support it, maintain it, fix those hard drives or system board crashes? Tell me what your total cost of ownership today is before you tell me my solution is going to be more expensive.
Yeah, easily a couple of grand, no problem.
I've been the sales side of this since 2009. My very first meeting with a customer, the pharmaceutical organization in North Carolina, is the only customer I ever walked into that understood their true total cost of ownership today at that moment. So that when we started talking about this, they never once said it was expensive because they knew what they already did was very expensive because they had their hands around it.
Right.
I meet with people all the time that say, "Oh, I bought a laptop for $500. That's how much it costs." I'm like, "No, it doesn't. It costs a lot more than that to buy and provision and maintain and deal with the issues." And by the way, now that $1 million ransomware hit, how much more is that going to add to that cost you haven't told me about?
And to get to your point, when we started introducing IGEL, this was the same point when Windows 7 was going to end of life. So I had a big project in place to replace, hundreds of endpoints with new Windows 10 laptop or desktops, and which was going to cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, in a small way, COVID kind of was a little bit of a blessing. So we didn't just do a lift and shift from Windows 7, Windows 10. We went from Windows 7 to repurpose to IGEL, and the ROI in that was something to behold.
Yeah. And well, at least we have the good thing of knowing that Windows 10 was the last operating system for Microsoft.
Right. Yes. Famous last words.
Yeah. Never say never, because there's no such thing as never or final. Chris Feeney, you want to chime in on the cost thing, and then we'll move to talking about printing.
I think there's enough. Then I think you've hit on some key points here. And I think it really is, kind of balancing that risk, especially as things shift to more of an OpEx kind of scenario going forward. If you're renting space in a data center, but I don't really have anything else to add. I could probably talk on that topic for a little longer, but we have a deadline to meet.
Well,
so
it's one of the most important topics. I like to think that XenTegra and other partners can help you figure out the total cost of ownership, or at least get a good idea of it. If you need help with that, let's talk. Hey, and by the way, all that dinging and background noise, I just figured out what it is, and you guys might not be able to hear it on the recording. I hope not. That's my virtual desktop. I was closing all my stuff and nothing was working, and then I realized my virtual desktop was up in the background. So that's just proof that we drink our own champagne around this thing.
Yeah, no worries. Like I said, last thing I'll just say on that, we do have a great IGEL ROI calculator on our website, sort of punching some numbers developed in conjunction with customers to, give you somewhat of an idea. But I think I'm curious about this next last one, this one here.
Well, I do want to highlight real quick, and I had forgotten you guys had an ROI calculator. Somebody on my team's like, oh, if we just had a way to calculate, I'm like, and then somebody mentions like, well, why don't you use the IGEL one? And nobody on my team even realized it. I've got to double down, highlight, because the customer needs the starting point to have these conversations, and it can't be net new spend, because if it is, most of them will not go there.
Yeah, I think it's you get the information up front. You can almost start a conversation with that, and once they realize cost savings or whatever, then that opens the door for maybe something that they hadn't really thought about, maybe a new technology that actually will enable them and help them greatly, depending on their scenario.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, number 7.
Okay, so we've all been told printing's dead. Nobody's ever going to print anymore. I print occasionally when I have to, and I'm pretty savvy to try to get stuff over to a digital platform. But printing still exists. We have a partnership with Printer Logic, now called Vasion. Now called Vasion. They're trying to move every print thing away from physical to digital. But I'll be dead before it's gone, no doubt. So help us understand how printing to and from the cloud is something that IGEL does. Or I'll start with why is it important? Because that's why it's part of this digital ecosystem alliance, and then also talk about what IGEL does to solve that.
Well, IGEL is certainly not the printing experts. From a Linux perspective, we have the stuff that you would expect to have in any operating system, plug something in, or network capabilities with cups and that type of thing. But on this side of the house, this is where our ecosystem with partners like Printer Logic and others that have a plug-in or an agent or something that when you connect in, it is able to then take and, whether it's a location situation or whatever, they're managing and handling all of that, the cost of printing, but enabling it for a cloud scenario. And IGEL is just sort of, we've got similar to sort of our unified comms kind of offloading. We've got a thing, you turn it on, and whether it's an RDP, Citrix, Horizon session, for example, leveraging that protocol, and then of course hitting the right printer, or as in some cases, it might be that it releases the print job somewhere, then you take your badge and you go tap to release it. For example, that's also a really cool piece.
So real quick, Chris, let me put Barry and Patrick on the spot here and see if they know the answer to this. So you mentioned briefly IGEL uses CUPS printing. What does CUPS stand for?
Something Unix print service. I can't remember the C.
And that's fine. Don't worry about that. Where did it come from?
No, you got me.
I don't know if Apple developed it. I think it was Apple.
Apple, right. And so what I'm getting at there is it's not nirvana, But IGEL, because of the cups printing that came from the Apple world, is actually a pretty capable printing environment. And when you throw in UMS and you manage that print environment from within UMS, you kind of have a print service within a service. And most people don't know that before they start layering on third-party stuff. And the third-party stuff makes it even easier to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a pretty capable printing solution before you throw in the third-party stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a great technology. I was kind of joking. I was laughing to myself here. When you're talking about people still printing, I think people are still faxing, right? I mean, we're still at the point where, it's not that long ago. I worked for a company where I had to fax timesheets to a certain person in the organization, and of course you have these e-faxes. I can't figure out the need for printing, but it's great to have these options in there. Such as cups locally and printer logic. Because it's not going anywhere. If we're still faxing, we're going to be printing for quite a long time.
But Patrick, think about, and Barry, maybe you can chime in, coming from the corporate world not too long ago, right? Did you guys still have to print?
Oh, 100%. We had 5 big, those big MFP guys all over the place. And that was a lot of folks like to print their emails as to archive them for some reason. And that's just the way they operate. So as unfortunate it is, it's printing is here. And it's like you say, it's not going away. And speaking to the fax piece, I had to fax something not too long ago to my lawyer. And so lawyers just want to take stuff by fax because that's what they know, right?
That's because legal and real estate, they're antiquated. I'm dealing with buying a property right now. And, I shared a document online with my real estate agent and she didn't know how to save anything. I was like, you don't have to save anything. But her daughter will know that and just assume that's how it worked. But,
Right.
Okay. All right. So here's my number one thing about printing. For most organizations, it's not that you have to still print. It's that people are too lazy to learn new ways to do it. When that next generation comes around, or when you go to print and it just prints to a digital workflow and we don't even call it printing anymore, that's when it'll start to subside greatly. My point in all that is that's digital transformation. You need to make sure your digital workspace strategy supports what's coming next.
100%.
And that's where I dropped the mic, but I don't want to break my mic.
A nice mic.
Right.
All right. So we're about to run out of time here. Complexity, legacy solutions are roadblocks to modernization. That's a little bit of spin, right? A lot of those legacy end-user compute solutions are actually leading the way in this space. But what they are not fixing is the cost of what they cost to make these things happen. I think there's a bunch of new players on the market that can greatly lower the cost while still getting done what you need to get done. Maybe they're missing a widget here or there, but you got to decide are those widgets you need. But what is true about that is if you're accessing the lowest cost solution or the highest cost solution in this space, you shouldn't be doing that with Windows unless you got a really good reason why you're doing that with Windows. Guys, any additional thoughts on just the space in general and where IGEL fits in? Chris, I'll come to you first.
I think it's just an exciting place to be, especially, I say, coming out of the, everybody experiencing a digital workspace, perhaps for the first time in many cases, remotely, if you will, but now adjusting to a world in which, as the first topic, hybrid remote kind of becoming part of that experience for them, whether they were used to it or not. So definitely a great time of life, time to be alive, I guess, if you will. That's all I have on that. And I do apologize. I have a hard stop in about 1 minute.
No worries. I'll get us off here. Patrick, any additional thoughts on the space in general and what the Alliance is doing to try to help highlight what's going on?
Yeah, no, it kind of echoes some of what Chris said. It's a very exciting time. There's a lot of new partners, new technologies that are in this space that, we kind of both partner with, Andy. And I think, for the end user, it's just what it's going to do is it's going to give people more options. It's going to drive costs down overall. It's going to give it's going to create more competition. There's going to be better options moving forward in the digital workspace. And it's just a really exciting time. We were all waiting for that year of VDI, and we kind of found ourselves in the COVID era where VDI was a big part of this digital workspace transformation. So, definitely excited to see what happens and see what technologies come to the forefront. But I think IGEL and companies like LG, partners like XenTegra, we're all really well positioned here to and to help
So-
customers.
Patrick, a really important question. Is this the year when we make the t-shirts, the year of VDIs 2023? Is it
I think-
official?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that a few times. So yeah, maybe we go, I don't know, we just make up a year and just throw it out there in the future.
Yeah. How about this? I made an executive decision just now. This is the decade of digital workspace.
Yeah, I
There you
think
go.
that's there's much more of a chance of that being true than the year of VDI for sure.
I think I need to trademark that real quick.
You better do it
get
fast.
on that. Go fax your lawyer.
Yeah.
You gotta,
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate the time. As always, a lot of fun. Barry, what'd you think? This is your first time?
Oh, this is great. I love having these conversations. Anytime we can talk about digital experiences, IGEL, these are my passion areas. So I'm happy to be on it every week. Let's go.
It's probably what you talk to the random stranger about. Just in this case, we kind of know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, we
That was
lost
great.
Chris. Apparently, he had a meeting he had to run to. Guys, I appreciate it, and we'll do it again next week.
Perfect.
great.
See you guys
Thanks,
soon.
guys. See
Bye-bye.
you later.